See me right now? Okay. So basically, what's going on is there is currently an election going on, but thankfully, your boy Evers ASMR is here to help you with the election and just predict who's going to win. So here's how I'm going to predict who's going to win. It's going to be Biden easily. It's going to be an easy win for Biden, but you can leave now if you want. But let's talk about the results. So currently, right now, Trump has currently won North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Wyoming. Out of all the key swing states that will probably go for Trump will be Georgia, Florida, and Texas, and Iowa. Now, as of right now, I don't know how it's going to go, but the way I want to think it's going to go for Biden is California, Oregon, Washington, and Virginia, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, um, and all those other states in the Northeast are probably going to go for Biden, more than less likely. Minnesota is going to probably go for Biden, but currently Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are too close to call, unfortunately. So let's see how that goes in the middle of the night. And also, I'll be playing some Xbox a little bit, so I hope you enjoy that ASMR. Okay, so we got some brand new things. So currently in gains in the Senate, balance of power. There are 104. There are 104 Republican uh, representatives now, and there are 80 representatives in Congress. So net gains. Balance of power: 104 Republicans in Congress, 80 Democrats in Congress. Balance of power: 39 Republicans in Senate, 43 Democrats in Senate. Currently, that's what's going on. So the Senate race is appearing close. But that's what's going on. So the election is going to be close, but I still think it's going to be a safe win for the Democrats. Um, I myself am a neutral person when it comes to politics, but it's probably going to be a Biden win, but we're going to see. So come back if you want, but we'll try to turn on another area of the election. So let's take a look here. Currently, there is a lead in North Carolina for Biden and a lead in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Arizona for Biden. But let's see if we can get some more coverage by turning on a very good audio file. So what we can see happening is that potentially we may not get the results tonight, but it could be later on this week. So that's a troubling thing for us because it could be an election week instead of an election day. You know what I'm trying to say. Like we may not get the results tonight, but I'll try to cover this as best as I can. So I'm going to go to a news coverage right now, and we'll try to get the best info we can for right now. So currently there are 104 congressional seats for the Republicans and 81 congressional seats for the Democrats, and one congressional seat for an independent, which is a Libertarian in Michigan. So let's take a look here. ABC News. President election. ABC News.
Exposure see if it holds up as the real results come in right now. We want to take another look at the state of Minnesota as well. Again, that was a state that President Trump had hoped he might be able to flip, like the state of New Hampshire. Right now, 36% of the expected vote is in, and it appears that Joe Biden has a big lead. Let's go back to Alex Perez in Minnesota.
Yeah, George, and what we're seeing is that Joe Biden has a huge lead in Hennepin County, the most populous county here in Minnesota. We're seeing 93% of the vote coming in from Hennepin County, about 70% of that vote right now going to Joe Biden. Those are the kinds of numbers that Democrats want to see here in Minnesota. You know, Obama, there were 19 counties that Obama won that Hillary lost to Trump back in 2016. And the Democrats are hoping they're going to be able to win back those so-called pivot counties. Now, the important vote, the rural areas, the Iron Range, the other part of the state, we still don't know the exact numbers from that area.
Currently
that part of the state typically looks better for Republicans, typically went for Trump.
Joe Biden is
so we will have to wait a little bit later in the
vote.
evening to figure out those numbers. But right now, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, the populous areas of this state looking good for the Biden campaign. George.
Alex Perez, thanks very much. Let's take another look at North Carolina right now. We've got the state of North Carolina with 89% of the expected vote in. It's a very close race right now.
North Carolina, 50% Trump, 49% Joe Biden.
Yeah, so we have just one county that we have no data on right now in North Carolina. The race is very, very close. We're looking at a spread of about 40,000 votes. This is Granville County right here. This is a swing county. President Trump won it back for Republicans 4 years ago. There's about 15,000 votes for Republicans, 15 to 20,000 votes. That could affect the score. I mean, this is such a close race. This was a state that President Trump outright won 4 years ago, and yet right now it's a nail-biter. A lot of the swing counties, President Trump has been able to hold on, especially in the southern part of the state on the border of South Carolina. But Charlotte, this is Mecklenburg County. This is where they wanted to hold the RNC, Republicans, hopefully to drive out some voters there later on in the year. That didn't happen because of COVID. Joe Biden's doing exactly what he has to do here. He's driving up the votes. So to win in North Carolina for Joe Biden, he's going to have to do that there and in Wake County as well. We're still waiting for some of the vote in there, but you can see Joe Biden is building on that Hillary Clinton lead in those counties. If he can keep doing that, there might still be enough vote out there, but President Trump right now on top with about 40,000 votes.
Byron Pitts, what are you hearing in Raleigh?
Well, George, I can tell you that at this point, the Democrats in the state are getting nervous. The expectation was that they knew they would have an early lead, but they thought it would be big enough that they could hold off a Republican surge.
So
they were looking for a double-digit lead when the numbers came out. It was only 9 points. And since that time, steadily as each half hour has passed, you've seen President Trump gain ground, and eventually he's taken the lead. And the sense is that the Democrats may be running out of time. And George, it's still early, right? I mean, North Carolina could go either way. But at this point, one of the things that we can see is that hard work can outwork money. In this state, for instance, in the Senate race, the Democrat outspent the Republican 2-1. And in TV advertising, the Trump campaign spent in TV and radio ads. The Trump and the RNC spent $41 million. Biden and the DNC spent $56 million. And that cash difference at this point doesn't seem to be a sufficient difference for the Democrats in a state
state in which they felt good going into the night, that they might have a comfortable lead that they could hold on to. But to this point, the Republican strategy to start close and then finish strong seems to be the direction that we're going in, George.
Byron Pitts, thanks very much. We have another call to make, another projection to make in the state of Kansas. Donald Trump is going to win the state of Kansas. Again, that's a strong red state, has always been. 6 electoral votes. He won by 21 points back in 2016. Donald Trump will win again. I want to bring in Senator Chris Coons now, Senator of Delaware, close friend and advisor to Joe Biden. It looks like we're in for a very long night, Senator Coons, maybe even several days of this to go on. Is this really going as you expected tonight?
Well, George, we had a record early turnout. 100 million Americans voted early, whether in person or by mail. And as we're hearing from all over the country, we had record turnout in many states. So I'm optimistic. When there's record turnout, often that means Democrats win. And I'm hopeful that Joe still has several paths to 270 and towards being our next president. I think his message all along that he and Kamala Harris can bring our country together, can move us out of this deadly pandemic and the mess that Donald Trump's bungled mishandling of the pandemic has gotten us into, has connected with voters and moved people to the polls. I've been checking in with local elected officials, colleagues in the Senate, the labor leaders in several states, and I'm still optimistic about a number of key states that haven't come in yet.
But let's talk about that a little bit more. You say he still has several paths. It looks like Donald Trump, we have not projected yet, but is on track in Florida towards a win. That was a must-win for him. Are we really heading back to the point where Joe Biden has to win all those 3 key blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, still holding out hope also in Arizona?
Arizona, I'm optimistic about, given what I'm hearing from a number of elected officials and local organizers there. And I think that means there's several different paths. It doesn't all come down to Pennsylvania. But I'll remind you, George, part of why Joe was a great candidate from the outset is he's someone who was born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, has always been close to the people of Pennsylvania, and I think has run a terrific race in Pennsylvania, as well as in Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona. Those are states I'm optimistic about this evening.
Senator Coons, you still think we're going to hear from Vice President Biden tonight?
I'm hopeful, but not certain. I think we need to remember that elections aren't called on election night. They may get projections from the news, but in the end, elections in the United States are decided by states and counties, and it's often days after election night when all the votes are counted. And given that we had 100 million cast early by mail and in person, we need to make sure every vote is counted before we ultimately reach a decision about this election.
An important reminder, no question about that. Senator Coons, thanks very much for your time tonight. I want to go back to Cecilia Vega at the White House. What more are you picking up now, Cecilia, about whether or not President Trump will speak?
Oh, shoot. Pennsylvania actually has a large lead.
Actually, we just asked an aide when the president will speak, and we were told that they didn't know. We are sort of relying on what Kellyanne Conway told you at the beginning of the evening, that he will, in fact, address the nation at some point. I got to say, I'd seen some photos from some photographer friends of mine here, colleagues in the White House who were in the room where the president's supporters are gathering in the East Room of the White House. And it looks very much like it is a room where he will speak. There's a podium. There are teleprompters up. So I would not be surprised if we hear from him at some night. And just in terms of a quick mood check, George, they've got, again, these 2 war rooms here on the grounds of the White House where aides and campaign staffers are feverishly monitoring these returns coming in. We've been told that the president has been going between the residents and these rooms and touching base regularly with aides. So they're keeping him up to speed on that front. But the mood check here is they're feeling extremely confident by what they're seeing. Those North Carolina numbers they like very much, and that's giving them some more confidence in states like Arizona and Nevada as we watch those numbers rolling over the course of the evening.
Thanks very much. ABC News can now project the Democrats are going to retain the House of Representatives. And not a surprise here, Democrats went into the night with a healthy margin in the House, but we can now say the Democrats will keep that margin. Okay. Mary Bruce, that means likely that Nancy Pelosi, who I think had not spoken to President Trump in over a year, will return as Speaker.
That certainly does seem to be the case, George. We know that they have had this incredibly fraught relationship. There is still that fraught relationship continuing. I think specifically about the fight over COVID relief, which continues to be ongoing even given the state of this pandemic, the two sides have not been able to come together and pass a COVID relief bill in these last recent weeks. It seems that certainly is not going to happen anytime soon. And yet Nancy Pelosi will continue. If Donald Trump continues to be president, Nancy Pelosi will continue to be his foe on Capitol Hill.
Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks very much. One more look at the board here. 95 electoral votes for Donald Trump right now, 93 for Joe Biden. That is because we've just added the state of Kansas for President Trump as well. And Terry, as we look at that 95 to 93 at 1044 on the East Coast, 270 winners. As I said, it looks like we're doing a little bit of a replay right now of 2016 with all those big battleground states still out there. America about as divided as ever.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Moran?
Yes, I'm sorry, George, I was looking at something else. But it does look that way, and it looks like it comes as a surprise to Democrats who thought they had the wind in their sails. But it turns out, I think one of the reasons the polls have been so battered is that Donald Trump represents a realignment. The pollsters don't understand a post-Donald Trump America, it seems to me. He wasn't a Republican, he was a nationalist. And that is something that this country hasn't seen. Other countries have. We've seen nationalists seize the loyalty of people who are looking for a different economy, a different culture than the Western cultures are trending, and they keep returning populist nationalists to power. Donald Trump is that person. I think it does come as a surprise, certainly to pollsters and to many Democrats as well. There's a lot of things, however this race comes out, for Democrats to do when it comes to the white
Senate
working class and the working class among many of the minorities as well.
Thank you, Terry. Another state has just gone to Joe Biden, Illinois, and it's 20 electoral votes, solid Democratic state, won by Hillary Clinton in 2016 by 17 points. Rahm Emanuel, your home state.
What's interesting, right there it is. I'm going to drop it the same way he's going to drop it on New Jersey. Here's what I would say when you look at the whole map. Every state right now that we're seeing is performed to actually what was expected, except for Arizona. That's the only one that's outperformed, that is different than what happened in 2016.
No, but that's an important distinction. You say to 2016, not necessarily to the wealth of polls we saw coming into this election.
No, that's what I was going to get to next. I appreciate the lead in right there. We should really take this on the road. I think it's really going. What's happened is that there's basically, when the dust gets settled, you'll see Joe Biden is overperforming in certain areas and underperforming from a vote total. But when you look at the polling, what some of the expectations that people have right now, just on election night, is they saw things happening in North Carolina, Georgia, etc. Still could happen. But what's happening is really, it's going to come down to 4 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and maybe Georgia.
I did some quick back of the envelope math, and it looks to me like Trump would have to get between 65 and 70% of what's outstanding to win Arizona. It's not impossible, but that's a really tall hurdle. And we've seen repeatedly in this campaign where the president is underperforming with seniors. Certainly, COVID hit Arizona very hard, and this could be an example of what we're seeing, where the COVID crisis is actually having a disproportionate impact in Arizona compared to other states.
And if that's the case, then he's got to pick up Michigan or Wisconsin, in addition to holding Ohio and holding Pennsylvania.
Right.
If he loses Arizona.
John, I'm going to go to you on this because this is where the Nebraska 2nd Congressional District comes into play. If Joe Biden wins Arizona, wins Michigan, and wins Wisconsin, but loses Pennsylvania,
you get to 269, and that's a tie. And the way the tie is broken is it's broken in the House of Representatives, but it's not the majority of the House of Representatives, which the Democrats control. Every state's congressional district gets a single vote. And the Republicans control more congressional districts, more state delegations than one vote. By one. They have 26.
If Joe Biden wins that 2nd Congressional District in Nebraska,
right, and by the way, we call it. It's got a nickname. It's called Obama, because Obama won it when they started splitting the Del. So it is a district that I would say Biden is favored to win.
You do not look at this person and ever think of the word patience, but I'm actually going to advocate it. It's going to be a long week. It's going to take a while. It's going to come down to four to five states, and that's what's going to happen.
I was going to say we have a very competitive congressional race going on in 82. Carr Eastman and Don Bacon, and as you know, this is a rematch. Progressives and Democrats came together to support Carr Eastman. So if it comes down to that, I think we might win it.
Okay, we got to
Keep
take
an
a
eye on the
quick break. We'll be back.
George.
ABC News, straightforward.
Stand down.
Currently that for Mandalorian.
I've been quested to bring this one back to its kind. If I can locate other Mandalorians, they can guide me. This is no place for a child. Wherever I go, he goes.
The Mandalorian, new season now streaming only on Disney+.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television.
Hello?
This is Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers.
That's right. Last seen in a red Focus.
The steering wheel is getting stale. Lock the door. We're fine.
Got ourselves a predicament.
Wednesday night, get ready for a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before. Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families. Living large, but
Holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is the con. All
Whoopi
new
Goldberg
and
scares the
royally
crap out of me, not
good.
gonna
Wednesday
lie.
on ABC.
Oh, look at this new guy.
Hey, clear sky, guys. Made it through.
Change is difficult, but this is my home. This is where I want to be.
I love that down. I'm not going to bail on it.
It's a big deal. New beginning.
Rebuilding Paradise, network premiere Sunday at 9 on National Geographic. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Welcome to Disney+. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you will find them all here on Disney+.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results the morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America.
And we are back at ABC News Election Headquarters. That's what you see right there, the map. 11 states won by Joe Biden, 113 electoral votes, 16 states won by Donald Trump, 108 electoral votes Exactly the states 4 years ago, the Democrats and Republicans won. There has not been a switch yet in any of the key battlegrounds. We're still looking at a lot of states. We can project now that Donald Trump, as you see up there, has won the state of Wyoming, and it's 3 electoral votes. Solid Republican state, no surprise there again. And we can report in the Senate, Lindsey Graham will hold on to his seat in South Carolina, faced a fierce, surprising challenge from Jamie Harrison, who raised tens of millions of dollars in the final weeks of this campaign. It wasn't enough to put him over the top. Janae Norman in South Carolina.
Yeah, George, Jamie Harrison spoke not long ago, conceding the race to Lindsey Graham, a hard-fought race that Lindsey Graham hadn't originally anticipated. As you just mentioned, Harrison raised record-setting amounts of money, and he pushed this idea about the New South, hoping a surge of black voters and growing diversity in this historically red state could help propel him to victory. But Republicans remained optimistic that conservatives would choose Lindsey Graham. That's one thing the state's GOP chair talked with me about earlier today. He said demographics are not ideology, demographics are not philosophy. He told me it is conservative ideals that have given Republicans a majority here in South Carolina, and that has helped Lindsey Graham in recent weeks, even though he has changed his stance on Supreme Court nominations in an election year by supporting the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. He's been able to tout those conservative values, and that has helped him a lot. He struggled more this time around with women and independent voters, with women seeming evenly split between Harrison and Graham, and independent voters seeming to lean toward Harrison. But in the end, Graham pulled this one out. He will hold on to his seat, and that will certainly help Republicans as they remain optimistic in maintaining a majority in the Senate.
John Norman, thanks very much. John, I want to go to you. One of the reasons Jamie Harrison was able to raise so much money is that Lindsey Graham becomes such a target of progressives and liberals, gone from being the best friend of John McCain to basically Donald Trump's biggest supporter in the Senate.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there was when Obama first got elected, I think he was Rahm Emanuel's best friend. I mean, he was the Republican you like to work with. He was, but he hitched himself. He hitched himself to Donald Trump thoroughly and totally. After calling Trump a racist, he attacked Trump in the most vicious terms during that Republican primary and turned right around. And Jamie Harrison was able to raise presidential level money in a Senate race, but not enough to win in South Carolina.
No. And Mary Bruce, Lindsey Graham was such a key player in the confirmation of both Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
He is the chairman of the powerful Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham just got a very big win in the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, but it was yet another example of the really just astounding 180 that Lindsey Graham has done in recent years. Of course, he came out in the end of Obama's term saying he would absolutely never consider a Supreme Court nominee this close to a presidential election. He went back on that promise, of course, leading the charge on the Hill to get Amy Coney Barrett confirmed. Lindsey Graham has really gone from being one of the president's opponents, one of his fiercest foes, to being his absolute top ally on the Hill. I can tell you, anyone who covers Capitol Hill knows in Washington, if you want to know what the president is thinking, you go and find Lindsey Graham in the basement of the Capitol. And he is not hard to find because often it works the other way around, too. If he wants the president to know what's happening on the Hill, he often comes and finds us to telegraph through the media. It has been just a remarkable run for Lindsey Graham. And I think it was one of the reasons, of course, why you saw Jamie Harrison raising so much money. Lindsey Graham was pummeled in this race by ads for his flip-flopping on his positions. When it comes to the president, Jamie Harrison raising that astounding $57 million. That is presidential level money, but ultimately not enough. Lindsey Graham, it appears, will continue to be the president's top ally, closest friend on Capitol Hill.
Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Christy, now the Senate battle is going to come down to North Carolina, Iowa, and Maine.
Yeah, and the Republicans have to win 2 of the 3 there. And I think they're in good shape to do it. I continue to hear from North Carolina Republican leadership. They're getting more and more confident as the night goes on that Tom Tillis is going to win a narrow race there and that the president will win the electoral votes. And in Iowa, spoke to a couple of Republican leaders there who think that Joni Ernst is going to be in good shape tonight.
We are going to keep an eye on it. We're going to be back in just a minute. Some of our stations are going to go to the late local news right now, but our election coverage continues in just a moment.
Facebook shops. Your customers can easily browse and buy on Facebook and Instagram.
People can come.
Are you ready? Drop in and explore.
So basically, what's going on is that Trump is expected to win a few states, but it's going to be a close one, and I still expect Biden to come on top. But that's just me. So currently, it's looking close in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Florida. But I expect Trump to win in Pennsylvania, and I expect Trump to win in Florida and Georgia. Arizona's going to be a close call, but you can probably expect Biden to win that state, but it's going to be a close call. It's probably going to be a tie, but anyway, let's continue with the election. But thankfully, what we're looking at right now is 104 electoral votes for the Republicans, and 43. There's 2 independent senators right now. There are. So Fox News is not being up to date right now, so we're going to exit out of this one. We're going to stick to ABC News. So in essence, what we're seeing is white supremacists sort of rising in the United States. You can disagree with that, but a lot of Donald Trump's base is from that, unfortunately. I'm sure there's people who are disagree with that, but that's fine. So we're going to continue because they're back to it.
Where is Susan?
July 29th, making sure that if something happens to me, our assets are documented.
Josh, did you kill your wife?
I'll never forget the first time that I met him. A chill just raced up through my spine. I just shook the hand of a killer.
Now, new details, stunning new interviews.
He ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
What will happen next? The new 2020 event, Friday night on ABC.
Live from ABC News election headquarters in New York City.
Right,
here again, George Stephanopoulos.
It is 11 o'clock in the east, 8 o'clock in the west. The polls have now closed in 48 states, and we can now project 3 more states for Joe Biden.
Joe
in the
Biden
west,
has 187
California,
electoral votes,
55
Donald Trump
electoral
114.
votes. Won by Hillary Clinton by 30 points back in 2016.
No, he won
Joe Biden will win
Pennsylvania,
55 electoral votes. In
Did he win
2020, he will also win the 7 electoral votes in the state of Oregon, and he will win the state of Washington as well. And it's 12 electoral votes. You see that entire Pacific coast. No surprise there. It is going to go to Joe Biden. So right now at this hour, Joe Biden has 187 electoral votes. Donald Trump has 114. Again, right now it is a complete repeat of the 2016 map. All the big battleground states are still in play. And one of the key ones, this could be a new state in play for 2020, is the state of Arizona. Let's take a state at that. It's been a long time Republican state, but right now, with 75% of the expected vote in, Joe Biden has a lead over Donald Trump. Tom Yamas.
Yeah, so George, the first data point I want to show our viewers right now is on the early vote. We've talked so much about the early vote now, but you need to talk about this number if you talk about Arizona at this hour. Joe Biden with a 10-point lead in the early vote, and that's so important because if you look at his lead right now overall, it's by 10 points as well. So where is Joe Biden winning? He's winning in the biggest county. This is where he needs to be. 3/4 of the vote's going to come from right here. And you can see he's up 10 points from Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. One of the things Joe Biden did here, he spent big. He went to Maricopa County and he spent $17 million. Democrats looked at the map after 2016. They saw that Donald Trump had underperformed from Mitt Romney. Kirsten Sinema comes in a Senate race 2 years later and she wins. And we got to talk about Tucson as well, Pima County. So you can see here, Joe Biden is on top. He's overperforming there. And we haven't talked about this a lot tonight, George, but that's the home of Mark Kelly. He's on top too. His range, 10 points as well in that Senate race against Martha McSally. Some people said this could be a reverse coattail effect.
Of course, Mark Kelly, former astronaut, husband of Gabby Giffords, the congresswoman from Arizona who was, of course, shot back 10 years ago. I want to go to Whit Johnson in Arizona. Whit, what are you hearing there?
George, I can tell you the Biden campaign is feeling really good about these early results and what they're seeing, although this is very much what they expected early in the night. Remember, we had the huge early voter turnout here. About 85% of the ballots were cast early. Democrats knew that they needed to take an early lead. But on the flip side, Republicans were counting on today. The Trump campaign told us that they had data that showed them that they would outnumber Biden supporters at the polls on election day by a ratio of 4 to 1. And George, I can tell you just talking to voters here, Trump has strong support, especially among independents as well. David was talking about the independent vote being so important in Arizona. We spoke to 3 self-proclaimed independent voters who voted for Obama previously, but this time voted for a second time for President Donald Trump. And one of them actually split the ticket. And you might be hearing quite a bit about that here in Arizona. He voted for Donald Trump, but also voted for the Democrat, Mark Kelly, for the Senate. 2 years ago in 2018, 150,000 voters in Arizona voted for the Republican Ducey, but also voted for the Senate Democrat Kyrsten Sinema. So we've seen that independent spirit here in Arizona. Again, this is maverick country, and in the spirit of John McCain, the voters here like to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down on the individual candidates they like and the issues they care about. But I don't want to forget about that Senate race, too, because it is huge. This is one that Democrats have really been eyeing across the country. You have the astronaut Mark Kelly against the combat pilot Martha McSally. Kelly has maintained an edge in the polls, and if he were to win, this would be the first time that the state of Arizona would send 2 Democrats to the Senate since 1953. That's about 68 years. And I can tell you, George, again, this is that Senate seat that belonged to John McCain. His wife, Cindy, endorsed Joe Biden. But the voters we spoke with throughout Arizona here over the past couple days didn't care much about any of the endorsements.
Jonathan, thanks very much. Look at this, Vega. 2 big issues in Arizona: COVID and its impact on the Latino community.
COVID impacted on the Latino community. And of course, we've been talking about this for so long now. This is a community that has been hit disproportionately hard. Some experts say that this is a community that has been devastated by COVID.
The next polls,
George.
I imagine, will close.
Okay, we now are going to hear House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is coming out to speak to the cameras. And we're going to see it right now.
Thank you for joining us. I know that transportation is always challenging in this time of coronavirus, but thank you for joining us virtually here this evening so that I can praise you for retaining our House Democratic majority. Under your leadership, Madam Chair, we have held the House, and now after all the votes are counted, we'll see how much better we will do than that. We are in a situation where some of the states have just said we're not counting anymore until tomorrow morning, and of course the West Coast has not
Pennsylvania, Donald Trump has a 200,000 vote lead.
Our race this time was all about health care.
Rhode Island,
This was vote
lead
your
with
health.
Donald Trump.
We had that in the last election. Our For the People
Texas,
agenda
Donald
was
Trump.
we're going to lower healthcare costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, preserving pre-existing conditions.
Virginia,
it
Donald
became
Trump
the issue
has a
of
lead.
the 2018 election
It could go
under the
Republican,
leadership
but
of
more than
the,
most likely not. Washington has
policy
gone for Joe
committee
Biden.
that Madam Chair was the a co-chair of then, carrying that message into this election because it is of concern to the American people. It is amplified by the coronavirus. So our purpose in this race was to win so that we could protect the Affordable Care Act and that we could crush the virus, that we could stop the spread of it, that we could reward our workers who risk their lives to save lives and now might be losing their jobs, and that we can put money in the pockets of the American people. So I'm very, very proud of the fact that tonight, relatively early, we are able to say that we have held the House. It is something quite spectacular because
there's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
That still can go either way.
House Senate Democrats will retain control of the House of City of Vegas. Sorry about that. We interrupted you. Finish your thought on Arizona.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. We were talking about COVID and the impact on Latino communities. And as we've seen in polling heading into today, COVID is among the top issues.
House Senate Democrats will retain control of the House of City of Vegas. Sorry about that. We interrupted you. Finish your thought on Arizona.
Thank you, George.
Michigan, currently Donald Trump has a 250,000 vote lead with 41% of the expected vote in. So it is a slim margin, but Joe Biden, I expect to win Michigan. Now you can disagree with me in the comments below, but thank you for watching this thing so far. We're going to attempt to make this live stream go till 1 a.m.
I appreciate that. We were talking about COVID and the impact on Latino communities. And as we've seen in polling heading into today, COVID is among the top issues of concern as Latinos head to the polls, as well as the economy and healthcare. But what we saw time and time again from President Trump in multiple visits to this state, and he made very many, and this campaign, the Trump campaign particularly, was heavily focused on Arizona. This is a state they do want to win. They were focused, one of the messages that they kept hitting over and over again was immigration because of the state's location along the border there. And he talked about the wall repeatedly and repeated the mistruth that Mexico is paying for the wall. Mexico's not paying for the wall. American citizens are paying for the wall. And as we've seen in the polling heading into today, immigration is very far low on the list of issues that are important to Americans heading into Election Day. And when you talk to Republicans in Washington and on Capitol Hill specifically, they get very frustrated with the president's continual focus on this issue because it's not one that is necessarily a winning argument for their base heading into the election. They wanted to see him expand that conversation in states like Arizona to focus on COVID, to focus on the economy. But immigration was a message that he drilled
Texas
in on time
is too
and time
large of a
again.
gap. Virginia has a small gap, but it can still go for Joe Biden.
Defined in many ways by the pandemic.
Sure. Going into tonight, I think that one big question that loomed large was how were Americans going to respond to this increase in infections? Were they going to see that as
Wisconsin,
a failure
Donald
of
Trump
the Trump administration? And then
pause this real quick. Donald Trump currently has almost a 50,000 vote lead in Wisconsin. It is a close one, but still, it is expected that Joe Biden will win.
Vote for Joe Biden, or were they going to stick with the president?
Nationwide, Donald Trump has a 3.5 million vote lead, with California included.
Fight the surge. 1,000 people died today of coronavirus, and yet when we're looking at the map, we really don't see that much.
Currently in the Democratic House, there is 200 people versus 173 for the Republicans.
Has changed as far as the way people generally, we haven't again heard from the battleground states yet, but we haven't seen a lot of change from how people cast their votes in 2016. There really couldn't be much more daylight between these two candidates as far as how they've said.
I want to take that to Jen Ashton, because Jen, we've seen all through this campaign such different visions on how to handle the pandemic from Joe Biden and from Donald Trump, as the entire country, basically more than 42 states, are in the grip of this second wave.
Absolutely, George. And we heard Dr. Deborah Birx in an internal White House memo citing that we're going into entire period of the pandemic to date. She is expecting to see 100,000 cases a day in the next week. And we have seen different approaches. We've seen different approaches when it comes to testing. We have seen some missteps. We've seen a series of broken down communications and mistrust in the biggest and most powerful public health organizations we have, the CDC, the FDA, the World Health Organization. And to circle back to the state of Arizona, to pick up on what Cecilia and Lindsey have said, we have seen from the beginning of this pandemic, while it did not start the racial and ethnic disparities that exist in medicine and healthcare, it certainly put them under a spotlight. And when you look at the state of Arizona, one population, George, that we have not heard that much about, American Indians and Alaskan Natives, there is a disproportionate effect of this pandemic, this virus. They represent 4% of the Arizona population, 12% of deaths. This is a population, George, that 30 to 40% of residents do not have running water in their homes. So when you talk about battling this virus, it's not just about the vaccine and therapeutics. It's very widespread.
David Muir, what are we seeing in the exit polls about all this? We have national exit polls.
We do now, yeah. That's right, George. And just to pick up on Lindsey's point, that there could not be more daylight between President Trump and Joe Biden in how they put themselves forward as how they would deal with this pandemic moving forward. Joe Biden saying, I can't flip a switch and fix things, but we do have to address the virus before we can address the economy. But look at this. This is the first time we're going to be able to do this, 11 p.m. Eastern. So if containing COVID, the pandemic, was the way you voted today over rebuilding the economy. And look at this, 51% to 42% in the exit polling. When you break that down, Joe Biden, 80% to Donald Trump's 18%, if the most important issue to you was containing COVID-19. Now, if the most important issue was opening the country, getting the economy going again, it's almost the complete opposite, 76% with Donald Trump, 22% with Joe Biden. And among independents, we're seeing this tonight, the breakdown, Joe Biden leading among independents in the national exit polls, 55 to 40. And among women in the country, Joe Biden, 56% to Donald Trump's 43%. If we look at men, 49% Donald Trump, 48% Joe Biden. And what we're seeing so far in these states with such close races is that not only is the country divided, but many of these key battleground states are divided right down the middle.
No question about that, Martha Raddatz. COVID is something that came up consistently in all your travels across the country.
It sure did, George. But I have to say that I was surprised when I crossed the country, and it was almost like people are done with it. It was very blue state, red state. They were wearing masks in blue states. They were not wearing masks en masse in red states. So people would talk about it. But I think in so many ways, there are so many bigger issues, especially to the Trump voters. I mean, remember, we have to remember, they're voting for an incumbent now. In 2016, it was, we don't want to vote for a Washington guy. He's something new. He's a businessman. But they're voting on his record now. And that record is COVID. That record is the economy. That record is immigration and race relations. So they've made a decision, those Trump voters, that they like what Donald Trump has done in these last 4 years, including COVID. Trump voters I have talked to and said things about COVID. I mean, one voter in Texas who's a very strong supporter had a mask on. He said he only wears it when he goes into certain establishments so he can get into them. But his mask said, this is dumb. And today he told me, Dr. Fauci, everything he says is wrong. So that message is resonating in those areas too. But you go through Ohio. I was especially surprised in Ohio. There were so many people out, not social distancing. And this is in Columbus, in a very crowded area. They had masks, but most of them were pulled down. But they were not social distancing, and they were just out. They just wanted to be out and try to forget about COVID.
Martha, thanks. Heidi Heitkamp, you certainly see that in the Dakotas.
Well, I think what's happening is people have bought into herd immunity. It's the only way to control it. It's not something that you're going to get over until you get through it. And they don't want to disrupt their lives. And so they know someone who's died, but, they were old or they were this. And what is really puzzling to me is that we are so willing to make old and disabled people kind of the victims here, and then just accept it. And you're seeing that in these vote totals. You're seeing it in the behavior, especially in red states. They don't want to change their lives. They don't think that changing their lives will change the outcome of the coronavirus.
Heidi Heitkamp, thanks very much. Let's take another look at the state of Ohio right now. We've now got 85% of the expected vote in the state of Ohio. And Donald Trump now appears to be pulling away 53 to 45 in that state. Chris Christie, that's what you were hearing from the state about an hour ago.
It was. That's what I was hearing from GOP leadership. They said that as this progressed in the evening, he was going to open up a more substantial lead. And George, I'm hearing the same thing in North Carolina, that both Tom Tillis is now leading by more than a point over Cal Cunningham, and the president is leading by just less than a point over Joe Biden in North Carolina. And that's been a steady progression through the evening to, chip away at that. And they feel very confident in North Carolina, again, that both those are going to go, that the way Ohio has gone here for Trump and for Tillis in the Senate.
Let's pull up another look at North Carolina right now. If we can pull up the North Carolina map, we've got 95% of the expected vote in North Carolina. Very close race right now, only about 80,000. 70,000 votes separating Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Tom, what can we look at on where the outstanding vote still is?
Okay, so let's look at the major counties here, because that's what Joe Biden needs to win if he wants to pull off an upset here. We're looking at Mecklenburg County, the biggest county. This is the Charlotte area. Right now, Joe Biden overperforming. He's 3 points higher from where Hillary Clinton was just 4 years ago. Donald Trump slightly down in Mecklenburg, but that's 95% of the vote in. Not a whole lot more votes going to come out of there. Wake County, the same story. Look, Joe Biden is doing well. He's improved in these cities around states like North Carolina. Let me look at one more area real quick right here. This is Guilford County. This was a county that the Trump campaign thought maybe they could improve on. It's pretty much the same of where it was 4 years ago. But George, as I look at this map, it's pretty much the same. Joe Biden is running up the score in the cities, but around the rural counties, even some of the swing counties that he took from Democrats 4 years ago, he's on top and he's still winning. These counties down here on the border with South Carolina, Robson, this is one that we were taking a close look at. He's actually doing much better there. So in the rural areas, it looks like the Trump team has been able to drive out their voters.
Okay, Tom Yamas, thank you very much. We're going to take another quick break. We have a long night ahead. We'll be right back.
It's looking pretty good. It's close. The Congress Republican but it's close. We'll take a quick little break real quick, but expect us to come back in a quick moment.
This year, make someone's the details, the backstory, and what will happen next. And listen. News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television. ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Back now at ABC News election headquarters in New York, coming up on 11:20 in the East. I want to bring in Nate Silver right now. Nate, as we've been talking about so far, every state that has been projected so far tonight has gone exactly the same way as it went in 2016. As you look at all the data, and you've seen more data than probably anybody else in the country, has anything surprised you tonight?
I mean, obviously Miami-Dade County in Florida, and the big question is that indicative of a polling error in other parts of the country, or is it isolated to South Florida? The fact that Biden has won New Hampshire, for example, might make you say, well, actually, it's part of Florida, but maybe not a problem elsewhere. The fact that Arizona looks okay for Biden. So, look, it's going to be a long night. I think we're in a scenario now where we're talking about this might take days to get resolved, but still, how much is that an isolated incident in Florida versus a national polling problem, kind of like we saw in 2016.
Yeah, and we still don't know how the popular vote is going to come in. Of course, we expect to see millions and millions of votes coming in from the Pacific West Coast, especially California.
Yeah, I mean, Biden will probably win the popular vote, but that doesn't make you president. And so, I mean, look, it feels a little bit like 2016, but also a bit like 2018, where Florida went very badly for Democrats, but they had a good night in the end of the day. The fact that in different corners of the country, the fact that New Hampshire went for Biden and Arizona looks okay for Biden would give Democrats quite a bit of hope, I would think. But, if they lose Pennsylvania, then we probably have a second term for Trump. So it's going to take a long time to know what happens in Pennsylvania, what happens in Wisconsin, what happens in Michigan. We'll know more about Arizona probably by, 2 or 3 in the morning tonight. But it's going to be a while here.
Well, and we should just emphasize that. We said it at the beginning of the night. We'll say it again right now. We have to have patience. We have to wait until all the votes are counted. We know it's going to take some time to count the votes in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. It is looking increasingly clear that we are not going to know who the next president of the United States will be tonight. And we're just going to have to be patient as we go through this process in the coming hours and perhaps the coming days. Let's take another look at the state of Georgia right now. 67% of the expected vote is in. And Tom Yamas, Donald Trump appears to have a fairly healthy lead right now.
Yeah, we're talking about 340,000 votes. And I want to show you one data point right now because this is interesting. Donald Trump actually winning in the early vote in the state of Georgia. So we talked about the spread, almost 400,000 votes. Donald Trump's holding what he needs to hold. The swing counties he took from the Democrats 4 years ago, he's winning again. Places like Peach County. We wanted to look at Peach County because, as you can imagine, they got peaches there. But it also has a good breakdown in the state. They have 50% white, 44% African-American. It's a place that Donald Trump won 4 years ago, and he's holding on to the same lead. But this was a county that Barack Obama also won. The big question, George, and this is maybe for other people on the panel, but the big question is, can they find those 300,000 votes in this area? That's what's going to need to happen, because in the rural areas, in northern Georgia, southern Georgia, the Piedmont area, Donald Trump is winning. His people are turning out. Are those 300,000 votes still there? We're going to have to wait and see. If we go into some of these counties, like DeKalb, there's only 24% of the vote in. And Joe Biden, he's doing better. But the question is he doing well enough to drive out all those numbers and drive them up in a big way? I don't know if 3 or 4 percentage points is going to do that. He's going to have to come up much higher.
Okay, Tom, thanks very much. We should also say we now know that in the Senate race, one of the Senate races in Georgia, Reverend Raphael Warnock, the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, will be in a runoff with the Senator Kelly Loeffler right now, Republican Senator Yvette Simpson. That could be quite a barn burner on January 5th.
We are ready to go to battle for that seat, and we're super excited about the fact that Raphael, who is a newcomer, has been able to do so well against two pretty well-known Republicans in the state. And so we predicted that this would go to a runoff. Our folks are ready, and we hope to take that seat.
And a very good possibility there'll be a second runoff on the same day.
Exactly.
Of Georgia. Yes. Let's pull up now Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Of course, those are those key blue-tier states. Blue wall for the Democrats was taken away by Donald Trump in 2016. Right now, 44% of the expected voting in Michigan, Donald Trump is ahead. 52% in Wisconsin, Donald Trump is ahead. 45% in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is ahead. John Carl, we're going to repeat this again. Right now, this is not necessarily unexpected.
Yeah, this is not unexpected. Remember, the mail-in vote, which we expect to be overwhelmingly Democratic, didn't even start counting. The process didn't start counting until today. So I fully expect that Biden's numbers will increase as it goes on, and not just tonight, but over the coming days. I mean, in Pennsylvania, they have told us that Friday is the very earliest. In fact, Pennsylvania will still accept absentee votes that come in as long as they were postmarked by today until Friday. So this is going to take some time. But George, looking into some of the details here, particularly in Michigan, I see signs that should be concerning to the Democrats. I see Donald Trump performing in these early returns quite well in places like Macomb County, which he won last time. He seems to be potentially putting up numbers bigger than he did 4 years ago, and also in Kent County, Grand Rapids, which is where he held his very last rally of this campaign.
Juju Chang is in Michigan. Juju, tell us more about what you're hearing about how the counting is going, how long it's going to take.
Well, George, it will definitely be a marathon nail-biter here, but at least in Michigan, not as marathon as projected. The Secretary of State Benson said a short time ago in a press conference that she believes it will be fully tabulated within 24 hours. Now, they originally said they wouldn't be done until Friday, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that yesterday, unlike the other upper Midwestern states, they had 10 hours to process. They had an army of volunteers come in, hand open envelopes, check signatures, so that at 7 a.m. this morning, with a double the number of speed counting machines, they were able to get to work, and they believe they're getting to work much faster. That said, they are also seeing record turnout in Detroit. I spoke earlier to the NAACP's Reverend Anthony, and he said that they had 100 lawyers fanned out looking for voter intimidation, and what they ended up doing was spending a lot of time getting out the vote, bringing souls to the polls, as the Reverend told me. But at the same time, Republicans are also incredibly enthusiastic about their ground game. The party chair, Laura Cox, told me that they had 9 million voter contacts during this season, that every time they were out canvassing, they never saw any Democrats, and they cannot tell you enough about the enthusiasm that they see and they viscerally feel every time there are these giant rallies, so many of which took place in the battleground state of Michigan. And George, don't get me started on the lawn signs, but you see them all over. You're in a battleground in these suburbs when there's a Biden sign on one side, the Trump signs on the other. I went to a Trump volunteer meeting, a packed room, and the organizer said, how many of you have had your lawn sign stolen or vandalized? And almost the entire room's hand went up. It says something about just how tense the battleground is here out in the suburbs.
It sure does. I want to go to Mary Bruce right now. Mary, you picking up any concern in the Biden camp, picking up what John Carl was saying about the way the votes are coming in Michigan and how they're coming in?
The read from inside the Biden campaign right now is urging caution and patience. They say, look, they are feeling fine, and that is because this was expected. They knew that many of these key states, especially the blue wall states, were going to take some time. That said, there has been a bit of a shift in tone, given the real enthusiasm, the real confidence that we were hearing from members of the Biden team heading into tonight. Now you hear more the words hopeful, optimistic, but they were really bullish earlier in the night. Now, not so much of that. But George, I have to tell you, behind me, they've started to bring in the cars here to this drive-in rally. If I'm really trying to pick at the tea leaves here, not sure what that means about whether we may or may not see Joe Biden later tonight. But of course, he sort of changed his tune there, saying he may actually not speak until tomorrow.
But perhaps they will be ready for him to speak. We're going to keep an eye on that. And of course, we're going to be here as long as the votes are being counted tonight. We're going to take another quick break right now. Election 2020 coverage continues right now. Joe Biden has 187 electoral votes. Donald Trump 114 electoral votes. It's a close one.
And the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your world. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you will find them all here on Disney Plus.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, and the #1 show on all of television. #1 in late night versus the competition. #1 in politics versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. Most trusted, most watched. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Now could be a good time to have another baby.
Are you crazy? I'm in love with you. Now that I said it out loud, it does sound weird. Please stop. When I see
you were so fine, I had to remind myself to breathe.
Feel something when I see you. Let's do this.
How's your quarantine going?
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Live from ABC News election headquarters in New York City, here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we're back here at ABC News election headquarters in New York, 11:30 here in the East. And as we said, it's going to be a long night, a lot more counting ahead. It could spread over the next several days. And so that makes me want to bring back our legal team, our ballot watch team. I want to bring in Kate Shaw and Dan Abrams right now. And Kate, we just talked about Pennsylvania. We've had this Supreme Court ruling on how and whether and when ballots can be counted in Pennsylvania. It could prolong this process, could be more challenges ahead.
That's right. So actually, the Supreme Court has now twice had a chance to weigh in on this question of whether ballots that arrive between today and Friday can be counted under Pennsylvania law. Both times, the court turned back challenges brought by Pennsylvania Republicans that would have cut off, the return date at today on election day itself. So right now, those ballots are going to be counted, but they're being segregated because the Supreme Court actually left wide open the possibility that it might take another look at this case after the election. And we don't know yet. And it's important, I think, to note that Justice Amy Coney Barrett is now in place, and there's a question about whether she might participate, which would, of course, give an additional vote when the court comes to considering this late arriving ballots question.
Yeah, I want to bring that to Dan Abrams as well, because we all remember 2000 Florida. If it's close, that adds another layer of complication as well if you have recounts and have to have the ballots counted again. So first you have the challenges to the existing ballots and then the possibilities in a close race of recounts, and the court's getting involved in that.
Right. We've said in our room here, the legal room, we're only relevant if this thing is close. This thing is now close. And so as a result, the lawyers are all on speed dial. There's no question that there are going to be
some form of legal challenges. We don't know exactly how real they will be, how significant, but Pennsylvania could become critical here. And as you point out, not just with regard to the 3 days of ballot counting, because there may not be that many votes in those 3 days. I think you could argue that the more critical question is going to be exactly how they're counting the variety of votes, the signatures matching, et cetera. And I think that those could be the critical questions here, even more than that 3-day window.
Okay, and Terry Moran, we saw how that played out in Florida in 2000.
We did, and one of the big questions here is how much will this conservative supermajority that is now in the Supreme Court defer to state Supreme Courts that find under state constitutions that these ballots should be counted, or will they reach into those states and federalize the question, decide it for themselves?
Okay, many questions ahead. We'll see if we get to them. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back.
Facebook Shops, connecting people with your business just got easier.
I want it to stop people in their tracks. I want them to see it, and I want them to think, I want that. I need that.
Sell your products right from Facebook or Instagram. Get started with Facebook Shops.
Nice. Living large, but
Holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con. All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results the morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television.
Susan Powell was a young, beautiful mother. She just one night vanished.
Where is Susan?
July 29th, making sure that if something happens to me, our assets are documented.
Josh, did you kill your wife? I'll never forget the first time that I met him. A chill just raced up through my spine. I just shook the hand of a killer.
Now, new details, stunning new interviews.
He ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
What will happen next? The new 2020 event, Friday night on ABC.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
Live from ABC News election headquarters in New York City, here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are back. Let's take a look at the electoral map right now. So far, Joe Biden has won 14 states, 187 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 17 states, 114 electoral votes. So far, at least, according to ABC News, every state that Hillary Clinton won in 2016 has been won by Joe Biden. In 2020, same goes Donald Trump, repeating his wins in the red states. The big battleground states still out there right now. Let's take a look at some of them, starting with the state of Florida. And there with 94% of the vote in, Donald Trump has a relatively healthy lead time.
He does, George. And I think when we look at Florida at this hour, it's really just some simple math, and I'll walk you through it. When we talk about the vote difference right now, plus 5 million, so huge turnout in Florida. We have to acknowledge that. We're talking about a 400,000 voter gap, right? I told you 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton comes out of Miami-Dade County with a 300,000 plus advantage. What happened tonight? Let's go to Miami-Dade County and look at this, George. We're talking about less than 100,000 difference right there. This entire state, you could bank it on this one county right here. Republicans were able to make inroads with voters there. Donald Trump, even though he lost, he actually won.
Okay, David Muir, what are we seeing?
A couple other really key things, George. Let's laser in on the Latino vote in Florida. As you can see, look at this. Joe Biden got 52% of the Latino vote to 47% for Donald Trump. If that number holds and bears out at the end of the night, that's a significant number for Donald Trump, not only with Cuban Americans, but perhaps gaining on some of the numbers we saw 4 years ago with the Latino vote. And look at this. We asked seniors, particularly in the I-4 corridor and other parts of Florida, whether or not they'd been affected by the pandemic. They were concerned when they would be able to hug their grandchildren, as Lindsey Davis talked about earlier in the evening. 52% of seniors in Florida, according to the exit polls tonight, supported Donald Trump to 47% for Joe Biden.
Okay, let's take a look now at the state of Arizona. Pull it up right there. Still 75% of the expected vote in, 54-45 right there for Joe Biden. A big lead there. We say that Mark Kelly also has a lead there. Not much new coming in the count yet. We still expect more tonight.
Yeah, not yet. But one more data point we haven't talked about yet. It's a county that's sandwiched in between Maricopa and Tucson, right? Pinal County right here. This was the county that swung the biggest for Trump 4 years ago, where he was most popular. And look at his numbers down. He's down 7 points right there in a very tight race, in a very tight election. You can't be down 7 points anywhere. It's just one sign. But the big headline, George, so far coming in, 77% of the vote in, and Joe Biden is up in a very big way in Maricopa County. This is Phoenix. This is Scottsdale, Mesa area. He's doing very well right there. This is the surprise of the night so far in Maricopa County. Look, Donald Trump had underperformed from Mitt Romney. Democrats thought Republicans were vulnerable there. They went in, and right now they're on top.
Okay, let me bring in Nate Silver back again as we pull up and look in states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania again. Those states still coming in. Let's talk about the possible paths now for Biden and Trump. Very similar to what we saw, first of all, in 2016.
Yeah, so if we can speculate a bit. So what happens if Donald Trump wins Florida, wins Ohio, wins North Carolina, but then Biden wins Arizona? We actually think it's a decent map for Joe Biden. He's about an 85% favorite. There's also a chance of electoral college tie. But Trump, if he loses Arizona, he could actually win Pennsylvania and then get to 269 or 268. That would not be enough. It could come down to the 2nd Congressional District in Omaha, Nebraska, or the one in upstate Maine. So if Arizona goes Biden, that really reverses not all the bad news Democrats got earlier in the evening, but makes Trump an underdog again.
Well, and then, let's picking up what John Carl was saying about Michigan. This is pure speculation at this point, but we're just trying to figure out what different maps might look like. If the Democrats win Arizona, Joe Biden holds Pennsylvania, but Donald Trump gets Michigan, they have only 16 electoral votes to Pennsylvania's 20.
Pennsylvania is bigger, and 20 votes in Pennsylvania versus 16 in Michigan or 10 in Wisconsin, that can make a difference some of the time, right? There's a lot we don't know. Nevada could be in play, probably not. Georgia, I think, is not going to be called tonight. So there are other scenarios, but we are looking at a lot of photo finishes, and then a photo finish, Arizona becomes a pretty important state.
You mentioned it in Nevada, and I wonder, Tom, if we can I'm talking to the control room right now. Can we pull up Nevada and take a look at what we're seeing in the state of Nevada right now? They're going to take time because they have all the early vote, and we just don't have anything coming in on that yet. So let's go back to Wisconsin. Deb Roberts, I want to go to you in Wisconsin right now. What are you hearing about the possibility of when the count will be continued there and when it will be finished?
George, I got to tell you, there's good news, bad news. The good news is it seems to be going very well. All of those absentee mail-in ballots, about 2 million of them, they're being processed very well. The Wisconsin Election Commission head, Megan Wolf, said that they're processing very well. But then she said she probably will give another news conference about 11:30 in the morning. So I'll probably be here right on time for Good Morning America. Now, the one thing that is sort of interesting, and you've talked a lot about this tonight, is those ballots probably will reflect a very tight race. Wisconsinites seem to just have this love-hate or like-hate relationship with the president. On the one hand, they just don't like him. More than 50% think that he's not doing a good job. 56% don't like how he's handling the pandemic. I talked to a guy in line today, and he said he would have swum through a lake of alligators to get there to vote because he wanted to support Biden, and he just didn't like where the country is going. But then I spoke with another voter who said, I'm worried about health care, and this is in a state that is is dealing with the COVID virus. But then he said, I think I'm going to support the president, or I just supported the president. So Wisconsinites are very mixed here, and I think it's going to be a long night, a long morning.
No, Wisconsinites,
and, the polls show that Biden is up, but it's going to be very, very tight here. I think Wisconsinites just aren't sure what they think. The president's been here 6 times. Joe Biden came here 3 times. He was here in Kenosha last night. He projects strength, and they seem to like that in spite of the fact that they don't like him.
Deb Roberts, thanks. Let me go to Eva Pilgrim in Pennsylvania for the same question. What are you hearing about how the count is going, how long it's likely to take?
It's an 80,000 vote lead.
Well, sort of like what Deb just said. So good news and some bad news. They say that the counting is going smoothly. Originally, they thought that we would have the majority of those mail-in ballots counted by Friday. But we just heard a little bit earlier tonight from the Philadelphia City Commissioners, and they were saying that they originally thought that they were going to be able to do about 32,000 ballots an hour. That's just not happening. They're saying right now they're doing about 10,000 per hour. They've done about 75,000 votes, mail-in ballots so far tonight. They've estimated they have about 350,000 to count. We're supposed to hear from them again at about midnight to give us an update. That's the next kind of ballot drop number that we're expecting to hear from them. But here's the thing. It's just going to take a long time. I've heard you say this tonight repeatedly, George. People are just going to have to be patient. This is a slow process. Here in Pennsylvania, I mean, there's like 2.5 million mail-in ballots that came in. This is a state that's never done early voting for all voters that wanted to take advantage of it. This is a first-time process, and it's going to take some time. The governor spoke earlier tonight asking everyone to just have their patience. They are doing the best that they can. People are working around the clock, as we're seeing here in Philadelphia, but it is going to take time. They want to make sure this count is accurate, George.
Which is the most important thing for them to do right now. Eva Pilgrim, thanks very much. We can project 2 more states right now. The state of New Mexico is going to go to Joe Biden, state of New Mexico, and it's 5 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton won it by 8 points in 2016. Joe Biden will win it tonight. And the state of Idaho, it's 4 electoral votes. No surprise there. Going to go to Donald Trump. He won the state by 32 points in 2016. I'm going to go to the table right now. And Sarah Fager, let me start with you. We're coming up on midnight now on the East Coast. Is the night going as you expected? What's the surprise? What should we be looking for ahead?
I think the night's going better than I expected.
For Republicans?
For Republicans, yeah. I mean, I was in the camp where I thought Joe Biden was going to win this, and it is far from clear that he's going to win this election. And the president seems to be doing much better in the upper Midwest. Now, again, we don't know exactly what vote is in. It may be heavily election day vote. But, clearly in some of those counties, the president is overperforming, and even overperforming what he did in 2016. So I think this is going to be a nail biter.
Rob?
I think the way I look at it is every state to date has performed like they did, not changing. There wasn't really a move in the sense that some people thought there was this tailwind coming, except for Arizona. And the only state that's flipped so far is Arizona.
It hasn't flipped yet.
It hasn't flipped yet, but
it's going to tighten considerably.
It's going to tighten, but I'm going to go out on a limb then, given it's midnight, it's way past my bedtime, and say that those are numbers that are hard at this point for the president to break. That said, we have big numbers in Atlanta and Metro Atlanta, big numbers in the metro areas of the upper Midwest that are out. It's going to come down to those 4 states to make the determination, and we are going to be here every night Friday. So I look forward to seeing you every night. I mean, so we're going to be here right through, and I'm going to sit next to you, so we're going to be there. But it's going to be a while here, and I think what the problem is, what was your baseline is going to determine your mood. And it says if you thought this was going to be a big tailwind, you go, oh boy, that was disappointing. As Nate said, the truth is, it hasn't been. It's actually, the states are doing exactly what they did.
It's also looking very good for Republicans to control the Senate. Joni Ernst is ahead. Tom Tillis is ahead. It's not done in North Carolina. The Georgia senators are ahead. If you go to a runoff, especially, if Biden does pull this off, you're likely to keep control of the United States Senate. People like a split power, and we will see at least one runoff in Georgia.
You don't want split power.
No, we don't. We want to take the whole darn thing, of course. I think a couple of big picture things I'm seeing is that the strategy to flip Republicans to Democrat didn't pan out. And so now we're all hoping that enough Democrats came out, particularly in urban centers and some suburban areas, to really carry the day. And I think that was the big surprise, I think, for a lot of us who were expecting, particularly with what happened at the convention and Lincoln Project, that all these Republicans were going to flip. But we're seeing Donald Trump win in big margins where he won before. So are there enough Democrats, particularly in these areas where we're seeing Joe Biden actually overperform Hillary Clinton in 2016? Will that be enough to carry the day?
Donald Trump's overperforming Donald Trump. And that's part of the problem for Democrats right now. And for Rob to say the evening's got about as expected, it's not what I was hearing about 6 hours ago. Okay, so what we're seeing is that the president is enormously competitive in Wisconsin, where he was not supposed to be competitive, according to the polls. He's competitive in Michigan, where he was not supposed to be competitive, according to the polls. And he's winning in Florida and winning in North Carolina. And so, I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania. At the end of the day, I think if the president wins Pennsylvania, he's going to be reelected. And if he doesn't, he won't.
Matt Dowd.
Well, I'm going to go along with Ram on this one, because look at every single state and look at the polls. Really, if you fundamentally look at the polls, they've basically been in alignment, give or take a point or two, been in alignment with what we saw. We will soon find out a divergence from that. And my guess is the first divergence from this is Arizona. And once Arizona diverges, I've looked at the data, it's almost impossible for Donald Trump to come back from where he's behind with what's left in there. And the other thing to look at is Michigan. Michigan is not as close as it looks right now. If you look at all of the numbers, all of those numbers that are in are almost all election day numbers. It's almost no absentee, which the Democrats were supposed to overperform in. And I still think North Carolina, there's a lot left to count, and there's a lot of mail left to count in North Carolina. So that race, I don't think is over yet. But the first state that we see that switches is likely to be from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And that's the most significant thing we're waiting on.
Heidi Heitkamp.
I totally agree with Ram and with Matt, but I think the story that we haven't talked about tonight, which is the popular vote. How much is Biden going to win the popular vote and still see this enormous challenge in the Electoral College? And that's going to reignite all of that dialogue again. If this is a 5-point win in the popular vote, I think that there's going to be a lot of challenges in this country holding the country together.
7 out of the 8 last elections won by Democrats in the popular vote. John Carr, you get the last word here.
Well, I think there are dangers out there for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania by looking in Ohio. Tom, if you can pick up 2 counties that border Pennsylvania in Ohio, Trumbull and Mahoning. In both these counties, Donald Trump seriously outperformed what he did 4 years ago. Now, that's in Ohio. Ohio's one state, but right on the other side, key counties in Pennsylvania.
You're going to be watching it all day, all night, perhaps all week long. We'll be right back.
happening. And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Behind the scenes, exclusive access.
Take you inside for an extraordinary tour here at ABC News Live. This is it.
It's time to go there, be there, experience it, live on the scene. Maybe that's why, in just 1 year, ABC News Live is already America's #1 live streaming news. And imagine this, it's free. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime, streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
Yeah.
It is coming up on midnight here in the East Coast. Let's take a look at the map right now. Right now, Joe Biden leading in the popular vote. He's got 50%, about 56 million votes, 56 million plus to Donald Trump's 48%. In the Electoral College, he's won 15 states, 192 electoral votes, 18 states for Donald Trump, 118 electoral votes. I want to bring in our political director, Rick Klein, right now, because Rick, we've been saying it, but now let's put some meat on the bones on this. That this is going to be a long night. We are not going to know who the next president is tonight. It might be well into tomorrow or beyond before we do. Tell me everything you know from the key states that are still out there. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, about where the vote is, how long it's going to take.
Yeah, George, it's overwhelmingly likely that we're well into overtime in those states, particularly Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. We know that there's a lot of outstanding vote. In Georgia, it's primarily the urban counties. We've had some counting issues there, and we know that at some point they're going to basically have to resume tomorrow. And in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, election officials have been telling us for weeks that they're not going to be ready to have a complete vote count. In Wisconsin, we're expecting more information overnight. In Pennsylvania, though, it's going to be several days. I think it is now fair to assume that we're into an overtime scenario with several states on the line. I think North Carolina may be a little bit different, but the other four, they're all big states, George, are now very likely to head into tomorrow or beyond.
And we should also explain it generally takes more time, not always, but it generally takes more time to check, verify, count a mail ballot than it does one made at the ballot box.
Exactly. You have to go one by one, and it's one of the ironies of this surge in early voting that it may actually force election officials to take a lot longer on the back end. They've been preparing for this for weeks. They have been warning about this possibility, and it is now a probability, or even more than that we're talking about having to wait a while to get this complete and accurate count. We know that at least on the Democratic side, they're starting to talk about lawyers. They're setting up an infrastructure to fight in the courts if necessary. But for now, we're going to wait for quite a while on the vote count. And keep in mind that in those three states, those upper Midwestern states, we're still looking at primarily day of vote, election day vote, which we know from all the polling and all the indications that heavily favors Donald Trump. So the Biden campaign is hoping to close that.
And again, you can't say this enough. I mean, we're also looking deep into where the vote is coming from, but both campaigns always expected the day of vote in those three states to favor Donald Trump.
Precisely. We knew that Joe Biden built up a lead in just about every state with any kind of early vote. Going into Election Day, the question was, can Donald Trump overcome that? And he has overperformed his margins in a bunch of states, and he has just about hit the expectations. There's a range of states, George, where it's almost uncanny, where I'm talking to Democrats and Republicans both, they knew there were numbers that Donald Trump had to hit to be competitive, and he's there almost to a tenth of a percentage point.
Dan Abrams, thank you, Rick. Dan Abrams, we talked about this moments ago. You guys are getting more relevant by the minute. Just walk people through what to expect in the coming hours and days.
Well, look, I don't think anything in the coming hours apart from preparation, right? I think that what you're going to see in the next few hours is the legal teams gathering and sort of playing it out as to all the various possibilities that could occur. What happens if there's a fight in Pennsylvania? What happens if there's a fight in Michigan? What are the laws in Wisconsin? What are the recount laws? I mean, that's the first place we got to be looking at right now, which is the automatic recounts. For example, in the state of Pennsylvania, if it's within half a point, there's an automatic recount that will take place in the state. Those are going to be the first round of sort of legal issues. Round two is going to be, okay, now there's been a recount. Let's get down to the very specifics of ballot by ballot. But we're not there yet. So there's no question the lawyers are on hold. The lawyers are preparing. The lawyers are learning the laws, particularly in those three states. I'm sure they already know them, but they're going to be brushing up on the laws in those 3 states as they prepare for what could be litigation, getting down to the point of ballot by ballot in some of these states.
That's the point I wanted to bring to Kate Shaw. Remember back in 2000, it was Justice Scalia on his own who actually stopped the counting in the state of Florida.
That's right. And obviously that's a nightmare scenario that it all comes down to one state, and there's the possibility of the Supreme Court intervening in a state process, right? Remember, elections are typically run at the state and local level, right? That is the sort of design of our system. So it was, unusual doesn't even begin to count for it for the Supreme Court to essentially halt the state process in Bush versus Gore, and then ultimately, essentially, to hand the victory by, stopping continuing counting to George W. Bush. So I don't think anyone, I think probably most, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, wants to see a replay of that this time.
Kate Shaw, thanks very much. We're going to take another break. Some stations are going to leave us now for late local news. For the rest of the country, our coverage continues.
I don't know, man. We may have to cut this news coverage short.
Now you can skip the grocery
All the
store
states are done
and stay
for. I
healthy
mean,
at home.
it's just
Sunbasket
swing
delivers
states now.
totally delicious meals ready
So-
in minutes. Fresh and ready meals. New from Sunbasket. Use code TV35 to
Well,
get
57, we're going to
$35
cut this
off
short,
plus
but maybe
4 free
12:30.
gifts.
Polls will maybe close by 12. At least that's what I expect to happen.
Spectrum Mobile te invita a revivir un concierto exclusivo con la superestrella del reggaetón, Ozuna. Visita spectrum.com/Ozuna Show. No te lo pierdas.
I'm expecting Biden to win still, but Trump has a shot.
Stand down. And more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television.
Wednesday night, get ready for a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before. Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families. Living large, but
Holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con. All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Oh, look at this new start.
Hey, clear sky, guys. Made it through.
Change is difficult, but this is my home. This is where I want to be.
I love that town. I'm not going to bail on it.
It's a big deal. New beginning.
Rebuilding Paradise Network premieres Sunday at 9 on National Geographic.
Hello, this is Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers. That's right. Last seen in a red Focus.
The steering wheel's getting stiff. Lock the door. We're fine.
Oh, this commercial's so fucking stupid.
Got ourselves a predicament.
When the night has come. What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
Live from ABC News election headquarters in New York City, here again, George Stephanopoulos.
Please, we gotta know these some of these election results, man. It's late.
We're here at ABC News election headquarters in a very tight race for president right now. Let's take a look at the map. Joe Biden has won 15 states, 192 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 18 states, 118 electoral votes. So far tonight, every state that Joe Biden won was won by Hillary Clinton back in 2016. Every state that Donald Trump is winning tonight, he won in 2016 as well. Let's take a look at the state of Virginia right now. Let's pull that up. Hillary Clinton won it 4 years ago. Right now, with 75% of the vote, of the expected vote in, Joe Biden is leading, is behind Donald Trump there. Actually, you skipped ahead to Texas. Let's stay in Virginia for a second. 75% of the expected vote is in, 52 to 46. Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Tom Yamas.
Yeah, okay, so George, right now, Virginia, we take a look at the map, and it looks a lot like 2016 looked like, right? Joe Biden, the Democrat, on top. What finally happened here? Because at the beginning of the night, remember, I was telling you about the suburbs around D.C. where a quarter of the vote's going to come in. Well, the vote is now in, and you can see Joe Biden is up with big numbers, 76.7, overperforming in counties like Fairfax. Let's take a look at Alexandria, Prince William County, 63%. So he's winning where he needs to be. That vote has come in, and also other areas that were kind of tight, places like Virginia Beach. Donald Trump on top there right now, which is a good sign for the president because it was razor thin just before that. We look at Chesapeake. This was a swing county before. Now it's swung back to Democrats. Look, Virginia wasn't a big story. People thought it was going to go for the Democrats. The votes come in outside of D.C. It's going for Joe Biden.
Right now it is. Let's pull up Texas now. Let's pull up the state of Texas. Stay up at the board right now. Let's see how much of the vote is coming in. 88% of the expected vote is in right now, and Donald Trump's starting to pull away.
Yeah, he is, George. And something really interesting about Texas, John Carl and I were just talking about this. If you look at some of the big counties like Harris County, Houston, so Joe Biden in Houston, the biggest city, he's basically doing what Democrats did 4 years ago. I'm going to give it back on time. You got to do that because we are now projecting that Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio.
Yes, sir.
Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio tonight. It's 18 electoral votes, excuse me, go to Donald Trump.
This is an indicator. It's that Donald Trump can potentially have a shot at winning. Pennsylvania and the rest better than.
But still important there.
Really important because there was no way for the president to win without Ohio. And as we know, no Republican president has ever been elected without Ohio. So, you know, when you talk about a must-win state, when you got that much history behind it, it's a must-win state. So he pulled it off. It took a little longer than we all thought, but he pulled that one off, and it allows him to continue.
So Donald Trump is gaining back the nationwide vote. I'm going to stay with you guys for
what happens in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Well, you just don't know. Let's remember that Ohio was the one state in that area that didn't flip in 18. So I don't want to cast aspersions about what might happen. So Ohio was red for Trump, and then it was red again. We lost statewide in Ohio for a lot of reasons. We didn't win any of the congressional races that we were fighting in 18. But Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania all split presumably in the midterm. So I still hold out hope for those other three states, even though, unfortunately, my home state of Ohio did not come through today.
Rahm Emanuel,
Maine is looking like a close one, but it's going to go to Joe Biden.
We can start to extrapolate certain
Michigan's
information, and that is that Donald Trump is in the race of Donald Trump versus Donald Trump. Donald Trump's beating 2016 Donald Trump. And while the numbers, and we keep showing how Biden is beating Hillary, but the total vote is not showing up at the right now in areas that Democrats need. So when DeKalb County is still out in Georgia and other areas, what is your expectation for that vote? And so far, while he may be winning 65, 35, etc., the totality of the vote is not matching the totality of Trump's vote in Trump's area in areas, except for, I do want to keep coming back to, we have had a state flip. Only one state is flipped, and it's flipped towards Biden. And so we got to keep that in mind at this area.
You keep saying that. I have to keep reminding our viewers that we have not yet projected Arizona going.
That is true. We have not projected it, but if you look at the math, it's hard to see how it does. That is fair, but that is this only state that is so far, and it's up by 9.5 points.
What are you learning from Ohio?
From Ohio, I mean, obviously the president won by the same margin tonight as he did in 2016. And when you look, to a point John Carl made, which is you look at Western Ohio, now that is a good sign for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. I'm hearing on the ground in Pennsylvania, African-American turnout down in Philadelphia, and that fracking issue did in fact hurt Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, that you see big turnout in those areas for Donald Trump.
And what are you seeing, David, in the exit polls from Ohio?
A lot of really interesting things coming in on Ohio. First, let's take a look at the suburban vote in Ohio. 52% of it went to Donald Trump, and then you do the breakdown, which really illustrates the gender gap, but it's huge. With women, Joe Biden won with women in the suburbs of Ohio, 53 to 47. But look at men. The gap is huge. 59% with Donald Trump to 39% in the exit polls for Joe Biden. On handling the economy, 56% with Donald Trump, well over 42% for Joe Biden. Biden. Job performance, 54% approve of the job performance from President Trump. Contain COVID, rebuild the economy, almost evenly split. But look at this. The opinion of Donald Trump, 51% unfavorable, but even higher for Joe Biden, 52%. This was really interesting, George. First-time voters, Donald Trump wins them, 54% to Joe Biden. It's what you said earlier, George. Donald Trump is getting out his voters. And on independents, Joe Biden with an edge, but certainly not enough to make up the room for those.
That triumph right there, that means that we have another state to project, and it's the state of Virginia. It is going to Joe Biden. It's 13 electoral votes. Again, not a surprise, but now it's been officially projected by ABC News. Joe Biden will win the state of Virginia. The blue states are filling in blue. The red states are filling in red right now. Let's go to the state of Wisconsin. Take a look at that. This is one of the states that Joe Biden will have to flip if he wants to be the next president of the United States. 64% of the expected vote is in right now. Donald Trump is in the lead, Tom.
Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge the gentleman from New Jersey on this one. About half an hour ago, you said the Trump campaign was feeling good about Wisconsin, and they should be. We still only have 64% of the vote in. But, George, there were 23 counties that swung for President Trump 4 years ago. I did some quick math. I was counting them. He's up in almost 20 of those pivot counties. So let's look at Milwaukee, because this is where most of the votes are going to come from right now. Only 36% in. Look at Joe Biden's numbers, though. Underperforming from 4 years ago. He's got to get that number up. And let me bring this up over here, because we're talking about the WOW counties. These are the suburb counties around Milwaukee. And they're called WOW because of their initials. First, Ozaki here. Donald Trump at 53%. We look at what he did 4 years ago. He's slightly under. Let's go over here to Waukesha, 61%. He's holding steady. And over here, Racine, this is a really interesting county. This is a county that went twice for President Bush, twice for Barack Obama. President Trump barely won it 4 years ago. He's on top in a big way. And we have to talk about Kenosha, because it's interesting what's happening here. Half the vote is in, right? But Donald Trump barely won this 4 years ago. There was huge protest because of the shooting of Jacob Blake, social unrest in the streets. It got national attention. Donald Trump right now is up here in a major way. This is not good for Democrats. Like I said, those swing counties aren't going for Democrats right now. One more county I want to talk about, Sauk County. Obama had this. It swung for President Trump 4 years ago. It was very tight. He's up there as well. We also like Sauk County because it's the home of the International Clown Hall of Fame.
I have a very important point to make about Wisconsin, and that is this notion of the early vote. What we are told so far in Wisconsin, there's 64% of the vote in statewide. The percentage of early vote that is in Wisconsin right now, we estimate to be 0. They have not begun counting the early vote in Wisconsin. So yes, it's looking good for Donald Trump right now, but that will change dramatically as they open those envelopes. They do the work, the slow counting of counting the mail-in ballot.
I want to bring Terry Moran in for more on that. You have more information on this, Terry?
That's right. So Wisconsin has one of the most decentralized systems for counting mail-in ballots in the country. But we are told, ABC News has been told repeatedly by officials throughout the state, that they expect those big counties to be counted in full by early tomorrow morning, 4 or 5 in the morning Central Time. And so we should have a better picture of those votes that John Carl is talking about by early tomorrow morning.
Forgive me, I might have missed you say the percentage. How many of those by 4:35 tomorrow morning?
100%, according to what officials are in Wisconsin are telling ABC News. That they should have Milwaukee County, they're telling us, by 5 a.m. Central Time.
Biden's going to win the election.
Brown County, which is Green Bay, sometime around the same time, before dawn tomorrow morning. So Wisconsin should be known. At least
hey man, I'm all for that. I want Trump to win, but the odds are too highly stacked against him. I'm calling it. It's going to be a.
Deborah Roberts, what more are you hearing on that from Wisconsin?
Well, you know, George, very much what Terry was just saying.
There's currently
the one
tight
thing
race
that
going
still
on.
has to be done
Biden
here
is
is that
projected to
those
win that.
absentee and those mail-in ballots
Pennsylvania,
have
Biden
to
is
be
projected
counted.
to win Pennsylvania.
And all the elections officials around
Michigan,
the state are saying that
Biden is
they just have
projected
not
to win
got to them
Michigan.
yet. We're hearing, as Terry said, 5 a.m. for Milwaukee,
And
4
with these
a.m.
early,
There's a state law that these
let me pause
officials.
this real quick. So with these early count-in ballots, let's say ABC News can call it in for Trump to win, but what happens is later on in the day, if all the ballots are majority Democrat, then it balances it out and potentially increases it to where Biden can win. I'm a neutral when it comes to elections, but I'm just going to speak what I think will happen. Now you guys can disagree with me. That's totally fine. It's in your constitutional right. but I think it's going to be a solid Democrat win this election cycle. But also I'm getting a comment from Garrison Kreitz. It's not going to be easy for Biden to win. Yeah, it's not going to be easy for both parties. It's going to be razor thin. Either one party wins by a slim margin, or it's a tie. It's one of those. So let's continue with the live coverage.
About 57% of the vote, and there is a lot out. But looking at model data, it looks like Trump would lose that vote as it's on its own by only 5 points. That is going to make, that to me means Wisconsin's going to either be very close or it's going to move to Trump.
Mary Bruce, what are you hearing from the Biden campaign on that?
Well, George, they continue to stress, as they have in the days leading up to this, that they believe that the early vote has gone overwhelmingly to Biden. And that means that they still are optimistic, still are confident. In fact, a Biden campaign official just tweeted that we are going to win. They still are confident, even though, of course, we are at this waiting period, this intense waiting period, constantly urging everyone to be patient here. But we have to remember that the early vote we still don't have a good sense on in so many of these critical states. That blue wall, yes. Would they have liked to win Ohio? Yes. But they still said that what they saw there were glimmers of encouraging news, especially when you look at the margin by which Biden was doing in suburban women. They see that as a good sign for Joe Biden, especially when it comes to Michigan, Wisconsin, potentially Pennsylvania. They are urging us to be patient as all of these other states come in. I can tell you the supporters behind me here are still holding out hope, very enthusiastic. There's just a lot of cheering and applause and honking because that is how we hold an election night rally in this pandemic. The Biden team here, when they called Virginia, they are now blasting out results here on the screens behind me. But the Biden team, cautious, but still feeling very confident, George.
Bruce, thanks very much. Nate Silver, I want to bring you in right now. Just give us a sense, as you're poring over all the data coming in right now, of what you're looking at, what you're thinking, what possibilities
Trump
are
is expected
most
to win
present in
Iowa.
your mind?
I mean, the easiest way for Biden to win is to hold Pennsylvania. We won't know that for a while, and also flip back Wisconsin and Michigan when you have more early votes counted, more mail vote counted. But there are other states in play. The New York Times has a model that has Georgia being very competitive once all votes are counted there. Arizona looks pretty good for Biden. I think it would be premature to call it at this point. But, it's not a map where you necessarily have, or a night when you have a neat narrative. It's not quite 2016. It might wind up being 2016. It's not quite 2018 yet. We're somewhere in between.
Can you tell yet whether the popular vote is going to come in fairly close to where the most of the national polling averages was? I think you had it, between 8 and 9% at the end?
Our best guess is that Biden's going to underperform by somewhere on the order of 2 or 3 points, but he might win by 5 or 6. It's a very early guess, but it's regionally correlated, right? So in Florida, Biden has a bigger disadvantage of that. He's going to lose Florida by several points, we think, in the end. In Arizona, he might hit his numbers or beat his polls potentially. In New Hampshire, he's very close to his polls. So it's very regionally driven, and the question is, what happens in Pennsylvania, where he was ahead by about 5 points? If you had a Florida magnitude polling error there, then that would be a photo finish going to the court, frankly.
Nate Silver, thanks very much. We have to take another quick break.
Okay, let's take a look at comments. It's not going to be easy for Biden to win. Trump is getting PA. As of right now, it is expected that Trump will get Pennsylvania and Michigan. Wisconsin will be a close race, but I expect that to go for Trump. Now, this is the Republican. Forecast. Let's take a look at the election map real quick. So what we're looking at right now is Trump is expected to win Pennsylvania, and Biden is expected to win Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona. So as of right now, it's really hard for Biden to win and hard for Trump to win, but we're going to see what happens later on to the night. This live stream will be on for another 45 minutes, so feel free to stick around. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy what I'm doing here. And remember that this election, that the big part of democracy is just voting in general. So, essentially.
Not having honey is just like hundreds of dollars? No thanks. See you later. What are you, an idiot? Guys, online shopping is supposed to be easy.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smart not. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Just after 12:15 here on the East Coast, that's where the map stands right now. Joe Biden has won 16 states, 205 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 19 states, 136 electoral votes. You see that familiar red and blue. Every red state was won by Donald Trump in 2016. Every blue state was won by Hillary Clinton in 2016. So far, a repeat. The big battleground still out there right now. We're going to talk to the former governor from perhaps the most critical state in the country right now, the state of Pennsylvania, Ed Rendell. Thank you for joining us right now. And Governor Rendell, can you just give us a sense of where you think things stand in your home state right now?
Well, I still think Joe Biden's going to carry Pennsylvania, George. The vote in the 5-county area, which is about 40% of the vote in the state, is astounding. In Philadelphia, this is just the same day voting. It's 254 to 36. In Delaware County, 46,000 to 7,000. In Montgomery County, 110 to 36. And the mail vote, if the mail vote splits, Democrats have voted 1.6 million. Republicans have voted only 550,000. I think Donald Trump will be down in the mail.